From Square 2, this is What's Wrong with Revenue. I'm Mike Lieberman, CEO at Square 2, and along with my longtime friend and business partner, Eric Kalis, this show answers the question many CEOs, CMOs, CROs, and business owners are asking, what's wrong with revenue? New shows drop every Thursday morning. You can find the video version of the show on YouTube at the Square 2 Marketing channel, on our website at the What's Wrong with Revenue page located in the footer, or on our free streaming service Square 2 Plus, both located at square2marketing.com. You can subscribe to the show or subscribe to Square 2 Plus, and we'll email you new show content as soon as it's published. You can also submit questions to the show on the What's Wrong with Revenue page of our website. Eric and I answer questions every single episode. You can also find the podcast version of the show on all your favorite podcast platforms. Enjoy the show. Hey everybody, welcome to Season 2, Episode 23 of What's Wrong with Revenue. Today we're going to talk about how eliminating the cookie is going to change marketing forever. And I'll be honest with you, some of you might not even know what I'm talking about. You know, is this chocolate chip cookies? Is this peanut butter cookies? We're going to clear all that up for you today on What's Wrong with Revenue. I'm Mike Lieberman. I'm the CEO and Chief Revenue Scientist here at Square 2, host of the What's Wrong with Revenue show. And my guest today is Alex Navarro. He is the growth strategist at Square 2, and his specialty is campaign execution. And I couldn't find a more perfect person to help us talk about some of the changing and increasing challenges associated with executing campaigns and making sure the campaigns generate results. So Alex, how you doing?
Great. How are you?
Good. Thanks for joining me. Let me take care of my housekeeping before we jump into this. So for everybody who's logging onto the show or listening to the show, you can check out the show on Square 2 Marketing's YouTube channel. Go over there. All the episodes of Season 1 and Season 2 are posted every Thursday on our YouTube channel. You can like it. You can subscribe to it. You can leave us comments. We appreciate all of those actions. You can also check out the show on Square 2 Plus. That's Square 2's free streaming service. It looks just like Netflix. It's located on our website, square2marketing.com/Square2PLUS. And you can also get there by clicking on Square 2 Plus at the top of the site or at the bottom of the site. You can go right to that page. We have content for CROs, CMOs, CEOs. We have a HubSpot channel, and we even have a couple of pieces called Pickleball Business Bangers. If you like pickleball and you want some business tips, marketing tips, check out the show there. And if you subscribe to Square 2 Plus, we'll give you an email every week when we post something new. We do tend to post something weekly on Square 2 Plus. Just like with Netflix, we'll let you know when new content's there and you can go check it out. What's Wrong with Revenue has its own page on the website. It's the podcast link at the top and bottom of the site. If you click on it, you'll get to see the last 2 episodes, but you'll also be able to submit questions for me and my guests to answer. And you'll also be able to subscribe directly to the show specifically, and we will email you the shows and we'll email you about upcoming shows, and you can stay close to what we're doing. Last but not least, if you're into audio content and podcasts, the show is available on all your favorite podcast platforms. Just search for What's Wrong with Revenue, and you'll be able to subscribe and download the show accordingly. So today's show, how eliminating the cookie is going to change marketing forever. You know, I really, one of the things I like about doing the show is we get to talk about how marketing isn't getting easier. It's getting harder. A lot of you know that because you're reaching out to Square 2 and saying that to us, like, hey, I've been trying all these things, nothing's working. Can you guys help us? Generating revenue month over month isn't getting any easier either. And unfortunately, it's about to get a lot harder. And that's because of some of the things that are going on with Google and some of the other platforms that we're going to talk about today. You know, at Square 2, we've seen a lot of clients running into issues with this. We've seen clients with quarantine lists. We've seen clients with suspended Google accounts. We've seen clients with suspended HubSpot accounts. Your email service provider, whatever you're using, can easily decide that you're a spammer and shut you down. So you need to be aware of kind of what's going on so that you don't get into trouble like this. Look, it's not like you can't get out of the trouble, but no one's about to log in onto their computer planning on unlocking your HubSpot account. You're logging on your computer planning to do some work. So it can be pretty disruptive. A lot of what's going on is because marketing practices have been violating some of the new privacy and anti-spam related regulations. And these providers have action that they can take to keep people in line. A lot of the martech companies are trying to get ahead of this and be responsible so that they don't end up having to figure things out after the fact. They're trying to do things now. So if the government decides to crack down or pass federal regulation, they can say, well, we're already compliant. Interestingly enough, and again, if not to make things even more complicated, it doesn't look like the federal government really wants to do a ton about this, which means the states are going to have to. A lot of states are already passing their own state regulations around privacy and marketing related practices. And that's going to mean you're going to have to be up to date on kind of what each of the different states is talking about doing so you can deal with it. And as we've been guiding our clients, it's better just to be overly protective of this and, overly concerned so that you can basically not have to worry about what the individual states are doing and just know that you're doing it right and that everybody is going to be covered. So the show should be very informative today. We don't do a show like this often. So, if you're looking for real technical guidance on how to navigate a pretty tricky part of marketing, this is going to be the show for you. What I'd like to do today with Alex is help you understand exactly what a cookie is and how it works. A lot of people are not even aware of what it is and how it contributes to effective marketing. And I want to look at what Google is doing specifically, because obviously they're the 800-pound gorilla in the market, how they're changing their approach and what it means to marketers. And Alex will help us understand that a little bit. And I want everybody who's watching and listening to the show, I want you to be proactive and be able to get ready for what a cookieless world might look like. And a lot of that's going to have to do with data and your data specifically, your first party data, the data that you collect. So one of the things we'll talk about is how you get your data ready so that if these changes do come down, your data is prepared, segmented properly, and in the right spot so you can use it the way you're going to want to use it. And then we'll also talk a little bit at the end about how a data platform for marketing and sales is critical for going forward and how it will simplify some of the more complicated parts of the puzzle here. So with that, Alex, you were on the show last week with a panel. Today, you're on the show solo, and you now know that I like to kind of kick this off with giving my guests an opportunity to do a little bit of an opening, monologue around this topic. So I got a mouthful going on here. There's a lot to cover. So tell me, like at a high level, like what you see and what you see going on and what people need to be thinking about. And then we'll dig into our agenda. How's that sound?
Yeah, sounds great. And, you hit in the head and that it's not getting any easier. It's getting harder. And the first step is understanding what's on the, what's ahead of us, whether it be cookies or whatever type of different marketing concepts, but it also allows you to be more creative and get to know your audience a little bit more, because you have to be reaching them in a way that is different and new in a lot of cases. And with the cookie policy, I think that yes, we'll be more restrictive, and the privacy protection for the end users, they will definitely benefit from this. But what it means for marketers, it just means that we're going to have to understand the new lay of the land and find creative ways that we can still reach our audience and produce revenue through and return on our marketing investments.
Yeah. So let me ask you this, and you've heard this from me before. You and I have talked about this, obviously, because we try to guide clients in a similar way. But how bad is it if I'm still leaning in on cold emails and cold calls and buying lists, email address? Like how bad a spot would I be in if that's the backbone of my marketing efforts?
I think your results will tell all the story you'd need. I think that with buying lists and depending on that, you'll see unsubscribe rates soar. You'll get blocked or flagged by your email platform. I think that you your message wouldn't resonate as powerfully as someone who's actually interested in your company and what your services you could provide. So you'll learn quickly how bad of a situation you're in if you rely solely on practices like that usually in a way that you usually try and skip the line and skip the hard work, that build up. And I think that planning ahead as soon as possible and getting in as early as possible is going to be key moving forward.
Yeah, that's obviously good advice, and obviously advice to share with you. I'm constantly trying to encourage clients not to try some of those shortcuts because, like we said at the top of the show, it's just going to get harder and harder to execute like that. You're just going to end up in more and more hot water at some point. So, all right, let's dig into this a little bit. So, look, we've been kind of throwing this word cookie around. It's in the title of the show. We've mentioned it a couple times. I'd like to think I understand it, but I probably don't understand it as well as you do. So help everybody understand exactly what a cookie is and how it works and why is it problematic?
Yeah, so the general concept of a cookie is just a small pixel or a bit of information that a website would store on your computer so that when you revisit that website, they know a little bit of information about your interests. And so they can sort of tailor that experience around the interest that you've shown in the past. And there are a couple different types of cookies. There's one that goes away after you end your session. Those are called session cookies. And those are typically on e-commerce websites where they already know what you're going to purchase. So maybe they don't recommend that same pair of shoes. And then they go away right after you end your session. And then the cookies that we'll primarily talk about are the persistent cookies. And those are the ones where they last on long after your session is over. And yeah, again, I mean, there's I guess the great part about cookies is that you get information, you get presented things that you might also like. It's invisible to you, to the untrained eye. You don't know what's happening. But yeah, I mean, you can visit, let's just say, a pickleball website. You pick out a paddle. The next time you come through, you might be advertised a different paddle, or let's just say pickleball apparel to the same website. For me, it's like, wow, that's cool. Like, I would be interested in apparel for pickleball because I need to get ready for Sunday. But at the same time, that's information about you that maybe you didn't necessarily give permission to share.
So it's good for marketers, right?
Yeah.
And you could also make an argument like it's kind of good for the visitor also. But the rub is that we're like storing information on them and they didn't really consent to having me store that information. We kind of just like scraped it from their experience without really being upfront with what we've collected and what we're doing with it and what we're going to do with it after they leave. Is that kind of the rub here?
Yeah. And, from a website perspective, a sporting good company, like that's different. When you take it to the next level from a marketing perspective, now you're using that information for advertising and marketing and taking that information and presenting them with your advertising outside of that website that we discussed. Now you're taking it and following that user throughout the internet with display ads, with paid search. You can connect it to any of your paid social campaigns. And that's where it takes it to the next step that we'll get into.
Yeah. Now, maybe you could take this even like further, because I know there's this dark web thing, right? Do you know anything about the dark web?
Not at liberty to say. No.
If you talk about it, they might come to your house. No one's
Yeah,
listening.
right. I don't know who's
Right.
listening here. No,
Right.
but I mean, it's a slippery slope when you get down to sharing information that or someone collecting information about you and your browsing history and scenarios like that, where it gets kind of scary, where, yeah, maybe it was great when we were talking pickleball, but now you're linking, things that are outside of a hobby and into
Right.
business, or to some extent, some of the personal information that you don't want to share, perhaps banking information and things like
Right.
that, or
Right.
that is out of bounds.
Yeah. I know we're going to talk about HubSpot like towards the end of the show, but they like really leaned into this a couple of years ago with these like smart forms, this progressive profiling that they do, where you only have to collect a little bit of information every time someone comes back, because it keeps building. So you don't need a long form, you just need a lot of little short forms, because you already have this information, and it shows back to them who they are, and some of their other preferences. Would that potentially go away in this scenario also? Like if we can't use a
Yeah, I'm not
cookie, does
sure
that impact that?
it could. There are other ways to, and I mean, from a user experience, it's tough to stomach filling out a very long
Yeah.
form.
I mean, I hate
time.
the form. Like when some of my stuff is already in there, I'm usually pretty excited.
Yeah, and that's where like the LinkedIn really does a good job with their in-app forms, where most of your information is already populated. All you have to enter is your email address, basically giving a permission
Yeah.
and consent. However, what's different about that is that you're logged in. That's how your information is gathered. It's not through a
Right.
cookie. It's you are
Right.
logging into.
And by logging in, I'm kind of consenting to be part of whatever they're doing, and so forth, right?
Yeah, and you trust that they're not going to share your data in the wrong way. And that's another point too. On any of the websites, if you're ever concerned, every website should have a privacy policy page that you could read up on. And they're all different. The amount or the level of legally binding is different depending on where you're located, where you're doing business, and which state you're in, and what regulations you have. So in that regard, it's kind of tough. But if you're ever curious about the cookie policy with a business you're about to do, or a company you're about to do business with, you can always find that usually in the footers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, cool. So that was really helpful. Thanks. Let's move on. So let's talk a little to the audience a little bit about how Google is changing its approach to cookies, and what it means to marketers, what they should be thinking about, like, and how, um, uh, like some timing associated with it, because I understand they keep pushing back the deadline around what they're doing. So try to inform us a little bit on what's up with Google, and how we should start getting ready for this.
Yeah, so Google historically, when I've gone in to set up an account, I've always created these audiences, and it's based on the website that I'm working on. And I'd be very specific with the audience. It wouldn't just be a website visit that I would want to retarget with advertising. I would have several different campaigns set up where they're broken up depending on the different services that I would provide with the website, or a different product line. And then from there, actually say, this product page, I want to grab all of the people who visited this page and serve them up a relevant piece of advertisement or advertising that is that represents that same product. And doing that through cookies and creating these different ad audience segments. And really what's happening now with all of the regulations and the new standards in place, they're really trying to push away from that and lean in toward first party data and using that. And for quite some time, there's been something called customer match, where it allows you to use your first party data, the contact list that you've gotten either online or offline. You can upload a list, or you can integrate it with their platform and link it automatically, and actually retarget that list that of people who have shown interest to that product. I'm going to serve up that product ad based on my data of people who have agreed and given me permission to market to them. Similarly, you could do lookalike campaigns using those same lists of first-party lists. And really what that transition is looking at with Google now is that going away from that cookie concept to the customer match, and then using this new concept of enhanced conversions that they're offering now to really make sure that in a very privacy protected way, you're sharing information. They're what's called hashing, or like breaking it down into not very discrete numbers instead of a person's name. And so that you can actually measure using customer match and enhanced conversions who is actually converting. And then through their algorithm, you can say, I want to bid on people who are converting. Make sure that I am bidding higher, or you can set your bid adjustments based on conversion metrics and not just, I want to bid to get the most traffic, or I want to bid to get the, it's more of what's going to move the needle and how can I be more accurate? And that's what they're moving toward now.
If you mentioned this, I apologize. I was like looking at something else for a second. You mentioned this license plate metaphor, right? You didn't mention that today, did you?
No, not today, but on a different call. Yeah.
Can you talk about that a little bit? Because that really like made it clear to me, like how like the license plate is a unique identifier, but no one really knows, what it is when who you are when they see a license plate. Like that's kind of like what they're doing, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's a really good metaphor that you're providing a list of emails. I know you can provide phone numbers and various other data segments and parts, but for the most part, you need to provide at least an email for the list to populate. And in doing so, it goes through their different system, essentially creates, in this metaphor, a license plate of each user has a number, and then you find through, let's just say, a lookalike campaign, you want to find all the other license plates that have Virginia plates or California plates, and then
or a certain make or model of car, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
And then you get to know it. And to some degree, you are anonymizing it, but then it's pulling in to the power of Google and finding other Toyotas or whatever, Forerunners. And so, that license plate model is a good analogy of how they anonymize it, but you can also use that to target your audience going forward.
Right. So I think I kind of know what your answer is going to be, but for the sake of our audience, so what do we need to do? Like as marketers, like how do we get ready for this new world? What should we be doing differently? What should we be thinking about? Like I'm the kind, I like to get ahead of things. I like to skate to where the puck is going to be, like a Wayne Gretzky quote, as opposed to like waiting for it to happen to me. So like if I'm going to take that approach, what do I need to do now?
I always start with getting informed, like staying ahead of the trend, really understanding where we're at now. And, just listening to this podcast is a step in the right direction. But yeah, doing some research on GDPR, CCPA, looking at the standards that may affect your business. And then, in, like you said before, like all the states are different. It's really a patchwork of different laws and varying degrees of protection for the consumers. So if you were to create your standard based on, maybe one of the states that are the most protected, that may be a good place to start, but also kind of just making sure that you're informed going forward. And usually it's based on the congressional sessions on a statewide level where you would typically hear about that, but there are other resources that you can subscribe to newsletters related to this, or
Do you have any you would recommend?
In the past, I've used OneTrust. OneTrust is a very robust library of resources, and they break down not just the new standards in the United States, but also in North America, Canada, and all throughout the world. There's standards in Africa and Europe and Asia. And if you do business, or you offer goods or services in those areas, it might behoove you to take a look at that. And then again, you can also there are third-party resources where you could pay to stay current, if that is something you're interested in. And then, going forward, just you really need to rely on your first-party data. Get to know your audience the best you can, so that you can segment that data, and then find creative ways to reach them. So the first-party data, really important. So instead,
right. So again, like we tend to talk in a lot of like lingo, right? Like, so if what's first party data mean if I'm not in our world? How would you describe that?
Yeah, I'd say your contact list. So do you, instead of a web visitor for a paddle, for pickleball, do you have a list that you have that in your database that are of people who have purchased a paddle, your paddle sets? And instead of relying on that web page, you can have that list of emails or data that you can pull from and action.
Right. So first party data would be information that you collected on your own, whether it's, someone did a transaction with you and you collected that data because they bought something from you, or they transacted with you from a marketing perspective, meaning they signed up for an email that you're putting out, or they
downloaded
sometimes
something.
when I order something, it's not in stock, and I'm like, notify me when it becomes in stock, like that. All those actions are how you collect first party data that you own because someone interacted with your company in some way, right?
Yeah, and
Right.
that they've opted into.
Right. And generally, again, correct me if I'm wrong, all that first party data tends to adhere to almost all of the regulatory issues, right? Whether you're talking about GDPR or CASL, which is Canada's, privacy rule, and Canada, California has a Consumer Privacy Protection Act that they're, they were probably one of the first states to have their own, statewide regulations like this. But all of them are good if me as the person gives my information to the company, at my own discretion, right?
Right. And you might have contacts in your system that are from before. I think most of this GDPR came out in 2018. CCPA, the California Protection Act, came out a little bit later than that. So one thing to note is that, if you do have older contacts, there are steps that you may need to take to re-engage with them and make sure that they're okay with you using their data.
Like getting them to re-opt in, right?
Right.
So if you went to a trade show in 2016 and you're still sending stuff to that list and they have never really expressly given you consent, you might be out of compliance, right?
Right. So that's something to look into and make sure your data and your lists are clean.
Right. I mean, I in my experience, a lot of companies are out of compliance in one area or another, right? Like, I think even if you buy a list, even if you like sponsor something and get a list, that's not a compliant list, right?
Yeah, it depends on that fine print. So when you're registering for a webinar, you'll see like a couple of the check boxes at the bottom of the form, or the registration form, and you really have to take a look at that and what you're signing up for.
Yeah, I also remember, and this is like a bit of a tangent, which we won't spend long on here, but I remember one of my big wins at Square 2 like 5 or 6 years ago was pre-checking the box on our own forms, because no one ever unchecked it. And we were getting a slew of like good opt-ins to allow us to do everything we wanted. You can't do that anymore either. You have to have it unchecked. Someone has to take the step of checking it, right?
Right. And you see that too. I mean, I I get the emails on a daily basis from the HGTV Dream Home, and you have to register every day, and then you scroll down to the bottom, and instead of the other sponsors just being able to advertise to you now, you actually have to go in and check each of the sponsors.
Each one individually, right?
Individually, if you want them to contact you or use your information. So that's their compliant form there.
Right. All right. So is there anything else we have to do besides like getting our like thinking about our data and how we collect data? Like, what about, we kind of talked about, we got to clean our data up a little bit. We might have to opt in people to make sure that like they're all compliant. Is there anything else we need to think about in terms of our outward marketing, our paid advertising, or our list that we haven't kind of talked about already?
Yeah, I think this is a good opportunity to just get to know your list better, get to know your audience better. If cookies are off the table, then how can we still reach those customers? And this could be an opportunity for you to expand on your personas and building out your ABM strategy, kind of relying on other things that still describe your audience, but maybe it's, I want to reach people with this title or in this industry, in this geolocation, or whatever that may be, and really break down your audience so that you can target them outside of the cookie world.
Yeah, there's a lot of data too on the more personal the campaigns, the better they perform. So as we started the show, like, yes, this is going to be a more complex execution if you have to run 10 little personalized micro campaigns as opposed to one general campaign that like says the same thing to everybody. But you're going to do better with that effort, and yet it's more complicated. It's going to take longer. It's going to cost more to get it set up right. You're going to have individual offers and messaging and all that other stuff, but it's going to perform better. You'll get better metrics on the performance of the different segments, and you're probably going to have a lot less issues with people being annoyed at you because it's so personal, right? So again, it's going to help you from a compliance and regulatory perspective also. But to do that, your data has to be highly, complete, right? Like you're right. You have to have role data. You have to have, industry data. You have to have maybe, issue data or pain data, or, or maybe even past purchase data. Like all that has to be organized properly so that you can run the campaigns in a more personalized way.
Right. And there's also the opportunity to leverage the power of the Google's algorithms too. So if you don't have that data, how can you make your ads more personalized? Another way is to create responsive ads. This is a big trend, that instead of providing 3 ad headlines, you provide 12. And then it really depends on what the audience is searching for in Google, and then Google will serve up the 2 or 3 most relevant ads. So
that's good advice. Yeah. So you're right. Now we have to do more ads, but they should perform better, right?
Right. And the more targeted you are, the better, the more you can understand your audience, the better. Yeah, you might end up, especially with ABM, reaching a smaller audience, but your conversion rate should go up, and you should have more of a return on your ad spend.
Cool. That sounds like the goal, right? Conversion rate improvement and return on ad spend.
That's right.
All right. So before we wrap up, one more topic. So again, under the umbrella of it's more complex, it's harder to do. We're big fans of HubSpot because it provides a lot of tools and gives you a platform to make this a little bit easier. So can you talk about how the technology and how a data platform across marketing is going to make this a little less complicated?
Yeah, I think we just hit on the lists and making sure that they're clean, they're segmented. There are ways that you can put filtering criteria on as a contact enters your system. There are form fields where you can add that will allow users to self-segment, like based on their decision of this drop down, you can automate where they go into what bucket, and then advertise to that bucket. So something like HubSpot, where you can set up those automations and those workflows, is a step in the right direction. Another thing too is that there's integrations already built in. So with Google and with paid social, it's just a few clicks and you can actually connect your search campaigns and your LinkedIn campaigns, and you can view it in one area. So I think those are two things that HubSpot really does well, that we use on a daily basis.
Yeah, very good, very good. All right, great. Let's wrap up a little bit. So we covered a lot of ground here. Alex, really appreciate your perspective. If anyone is interested in learning more about this, then you know how to get in touch with us. You can, connect with us on our website, or you can even email me directly, Mike@square2marketing.com. I'm happy to deploy the Square 2 team that deals with this on a regular basis for our clients, for you and your issues as well. So if anyone's interested in that, don't hesitate to take me up on it. Alex, thanks for joining the show. I really appreciate it. Episode 24 of season 2 is going to be next week. We're going to talk about why know, like, and trust is critical to revenue generation. And I'm going to have my senior engagement specialist, Cade Wilcox, on the call. Cade focuses on working with our prospects before they become clients. And know, like, and trust is basically the name of his game. He has to get them to know, like, and trust him, our company, and what we do pretty quickly. And we'll share with you some secrets to how we get to that. Remind everybody the show's available on Square 2's YouTube channel, Square 2 Marketing's YouTube channel. All the shows from season 1 and season 2 are available there. We post them every Thursday. Go check it out. You can like us, you can subscribe to it, and leave us comments. We really appreciate it. You can also get the show on Square 2 Plus. It's Square 2's free streaming service, just like Netflix. It's located at square2marketing.com /Square2PLUS. And you can subscribe to Square 2 Plus right there, and we'll email you every time we post something new. We regularly post new content on Square 2 Plus, probably once a week. This show and some of the other videos and audio content we're creating. And if you like the show, we have our own page. Top of the page of square2marketing.com is podcast. Click on it. We have a podcast link at the bottom of the show. Click on it, and you'll taken directly to the What's Wrong with Revenue page, where you can subscribe to the show directly. You can also leave us questions. We didn't handle any questions today due to time, but if you leave questions, I'll make sure we catch up with those and get them out to all of you as well. And if you can subscribe to the show there, we'll send it right to your inbox every Thursday. So thanks again, everybody. Looking forward to seeing you next week. Alex, thanks again for joining me, and have a good rest of your day.
See you.